How you doing, gentlemen? Today we're going to be looking at the causes leading up to the War of 1812. The War of 1812 was also known as the Second War for Independence, mainly because it followed the same type of track and we were fighting against the same opponent, and that is Britain, but only to a point. And that's one thing that we got to understand about the War of 1812. It's a very unique war because it's provided with one name and one date, but it encompassed many different things, which we are going to be looking at. So just an overview. What we're going to start with is Jefferson's second term and his failed foreign policies and how they turned into domestic economic problems. Then James Madison's presidency, the escalating conflict within and also abroad, the war hawk domination of the Congress and how that pushed us towards the war, and then last but not least, looking at the war itself, just a brief overview, which will introduce some points that we'll talk about later. So first, Jefferson's second term. During Jefferson's second term, overseas you have Napoleon ripping through Europe. The Napoleonic Wars are going on, and America is caught in the middle. We are neutral. We try to remain neutral, but France and Britain are both trading partners, and they're also both taking our ships and our sailors. So this has become a major issue of tension, and we're not quite sure how to handle this, especially Jefferson. It comes to a head during the attack on the USS Chesapeake. The USS Chesapeake meets the HMS Leopard. The Leopard is demanding that the USS Chesapeake give the dissenters and deserters from the British Royal Navy that are on board. I believe there were 4 of them. A couple of them were actually American born, but they sailed for the British Navy. The Chesapeake refuses to allow them aboard to take those prisoners, so they then fire upon them, and the Chesapeake then allows for the boarding and the capture of those sailors. The American-born sailors are turned over to America. The British-born sailors that deserted were taken to Canada and executed for treachery. But this is the beginning of that, and this is the height of the tension. After this, people are calling for a war because we were attacked. Jefferson decides for a peaceful coercion and places an embargo upon them, the embargo of 1807, which is highlighted in this little political cartoon of the time. That is a miserable failure. It causes a massive recession. Jefferson's term is up just in time. Madison is now given the responsibility of picking up the pieces, so he then tries to come up with an idea of how to fix this. So first is the Embargo Act is replaced by the Non-Intercourse Act, which does not allow ships to enter into our ports, especially ships that are at war. That doesn't work, doesn't fix anything, so then that is replaced a year later by Macon's Bill No. 2, saying that whoever allows for our ships to enter in peacefully, we will then trade with them. And if the other guy does not, within 3 months, then we don't trade with them, and the Non-Intercourse Act is then reestablished. This becomes the issue because France, who's looking for allies and looking for supplies, they're hurting for resources, opens up their ports first, so we then go with them. And that now puts us as the enemy to the British because we are now supporting the French. Now, under Madison's presidency and how we slowly get towards war, it's mainly because of the new Democratic Republicans that are in Congress. And this is just a little rap sheet on those war hawks, or the new Democratic Republicans that are taking over. Strongly nationalistic, proving themselves against Britain. A lot of them hold grudges from the Revolution, and they want to show the British that we are a new country and we can stand up for ourselves. We're big boys now. They were predominantly from the South and the West. They encouraged that westward expansion, and they are led by two of the more prominent members and very influential men in U.S. history, which you'll look at a little bit later, Henry Clay and John C. Calhoun of South Carolina. Henry Clay is known as the Great Compromiser because during his term in Congress, he comes up with compromises that balance out the powers and make everybody happy, especially those when you start to see the tensions rising over the expansion of slavery. Henry Clay plays a very large role with that. So Madison has to handle these guys coming into Congress, and this Congress that now wants a war. So with the war hawks, what they wanted was Canada and the expulsion of Britain from Canada by force if necessary, the removal of the Native Americans to the west of the Mississippi River by force if necessary, and then the control and the kick out of Spanish from Spanish Florida by force if necessary. So you can see the common theme as we're going through this. The impressment of our sailors by the British is what is driving. It's a catalyst. Even though the French are doing the same exact thing, we don't really pay attention to that. We're focused on the British. And again, John C. Calhoun and Henry Clay are two leading this charge. The dove is Daniel Webster. He's kind of the voice of reason, talking about not going to war, but he is drowned out by the war hawk cry. So the orders and councils by the British and the imperial decrees by the French both say pretty much the same thing, that if a citizen deserts the royal navies, then they can be recaptured and forced back into their service, into their respective navies. So anyone of British descent and anyone of French descent. So they're just plucking American citizens who are of French descent or of British descent, or claiming that, and putting them into their ships because they are hurting for troops. And what this does is it actually makes it look like the French and the British do not respect and honor American citizenship. They're not really seeing it as a legit citizenship, which again is driving people to call for a war, to stand up for ourselves. The New Englanders were on the British side, and this has to do with the trading. Britain was our major trading ally, and the New Englanders felt that they were going to be losing out on money. They had already been hurt by the embargoes and the Non-Intercourse Act, but they saw this as a very bad idea. And now, going back to the Revolution, thinking about how that is completely opposite of the American Revolution, where it was the British and the New Englanders who were calling for independence against the British. They were the driving force. During the War of 1812, they're kind of the voice of reason and the guys that don't want to see a war. The Democratic Republicans, though, they are in favor of the French. They are not in favor of the British, and they want to see a war. So a declaration of war is issued June 12th. The official reason is because of British impressment, even though the British canceled the Orders of Council months before and said that they were no longer going to impress American citizens. The Warhawks don't care. They did it, so they have to pay for it. The unofficial reason is payback. Right? They want to show the British how far they've come since the Revolution. The Revolution was not a fluke. That we did win our independence. It wasn't given to us. Now, the war with Native Americans and tensions had already been there. The Battle of Fallen Timbers in 1794 was that example of rising tensions. You have the Native American tribes in the area banding together, and with the help of the British and Canada, they they're working to prevent westward expansion. Following the battle, the Treaty of Greenville is established in 1795, and under the treaty, it relinquished the southern two-thirds of the Ohio, and the Ohio Territory, that is, and the natives were then allowed to keep everything above and to the west as well. This then is not enough, so the Ohio Territory is now under American control, but this again comes to a head about 16 years later with the Battle of Tippecanoe. Now, in the Old Northwest, you have two major players in leading the native resistance. Tenskwatawa, also known as the Prophet, was calling for the return of traditional Native American ways. He did not agree with natives assimilating with the American settlers, becoming Europeanized. So he was calling for that resistance and that call back to their roots. Where his brother Tecumseh, also calling back to those roots, he also said that the natives should stand up and, if needed, take military action against the United States expansion. So Tecumseh, and along with his brother Tenskwatawa, called for the unification of all native tribes. They believed that if all native tribes could unify, not only just in that area, but throughout the continental United States, that they could have enough power to prevent the American expansion, United States expansion. So he wasn't calling for violence in saying that they were going to do anything, but they said that if need be, they would call on military action. It comes to a head at the Battle of Tippecanoe. This is considered the first battle of the War of 1812, the unofficial beginning, and this is because it is that first battle in the Native American portion of the war, and then that war in that Old Northwest. So just a brief overview of the War of 1812. First, it was a small war. There were no great numbers taking part in this. It was very poorly fought by the Americans. It showed how we were severely unprepared. The majority of the fighting was done by militia. It also showed that national disunity because the North opposed the war and the South and the West wanted it, and this disunity almost tore us apart. The Hartford Convention, led by the Federalists, were calling for a secession. They almost got it. They were late to declare their secession because they got there just in time to see that the peace treaty was signed and that the war was over, so they had no legs to stand on. So because of that, and this was the second attempt of New England Federalists trying to secede. The Federalist Party is pretty much completed. It's done. Because of the war with the natives, especially looking at with the Northwest Territory and also the Creek War that is occurring in the South, you have large Native American losses. But the main thing is this places the United States on good footing with Europe. The Americans showed that they could stand up for a second time against the British, but there are problems within. This was a hodgepodge of a war, many little minor wars within, many problems within. But the major significance that comes out of this is the war that is considered to make America. We come out of this war feeling stronger about ourselves, great national pride. We also feel really good about our future, and westward expansion opens up. So this war springboards the United States into a better era, which we'll look at a little bit later. But so War of 1812, and we'll look at this and especially these points a little bit more in detail in class. But this war is considered the war that made America. Have a great night.